Struggling to close out games? In this video, we're going to look at how to play the late game in Eternal Return. We'll cover everything from identifying your win condition to starving out the rest of the lobby. Stay tuned because I'll also be teaching you how to ABC a final zone with the new timer changes. What's poppin' everyone, it's your boy Levi, and as you enter the late game, hopefully your build looks something similar to mine. You want to at worst have 2 or 3 transitions, and at best be 6 slotted. You've picked up a few kills, built up some mastery, so what do you do next? First thing you should do is identify your win condition. The easiest identifiable win condition is wick buff. In the last part of the complete beginner's guide, I gave you all some tips and tricks about how and when you should go for wick buff. Assuming you did get wick buff, you're in pretty good condition to win. You'll be stronger than most of the lobby and should be able to pick up kills on anyone that picks fights with you. You still have to play the fight properly, but you're more likely to have the strength advantage. Similar to wick buff, just being flat out stronger than everyone else is also a win condition. If you have more mastery and more transitions than everyone else, it follows the same formula as wick. Traps are another win condition. If you killed an ISIL, found traps in air supplies, or even just crafted traps, you can use these to neutralize any deficits you might have. Are you a ranged character that will die quickly if a melee gets onto you? Put a double guillotine down in front of you to stop them in their tracks. Worried that you don't have enough damage to kill somebody? Remote mines and smart bombs will explode for huge damage. Once you've identified your win condition, it's time to play accordingly. If you're one of the weaker players in the lobby, you're playing for placements. Stay safe, look to third party for your kills, and focus on making it to safe zones. If you're one of the stronger players, you're going to want to starve out the rest of the lobby. Open your map and check out where the gold air supplies are dropping. You want to make sure you get to these gold boxes for 2 reasons. 1, the obvious, it has the potential to be an upgrade for one of your items. And 2, it's one less resource for your opponents to grab. If it's an item you don't need, just turn it into credits. And speaking of credits, if you have excess credits and have access to Rare Resource Console, remember your consumables. Mithril Water, Zen Vitality, and Tears of Selene will give you permanent stat boosts. If you don't have access to Rare Resource Console, you should check your inventory for what you're in need of. If you're out of food and can't make it to a food prep zone, you'll need food prep. If you don't have cameras and there's no access to bats, call in cameras. If there's an ISIL, a Barbara, or anyone you think might be using traps, make EMPs. If you have all of the above, start making traps. A good tip when you're making traps with excess credits is to just make the pendulum axe part of a double guillotine. They'll cost way less credits to call in. You won't do as much damage with them, but the point of them is to just briefly root opponents anyways, and a 0.75 second root is usually pretty good most of the time. It's definitely long enough to hit a tough skill shot if you have one. When it's coming down to the final zone, you'll want to establish zone control. Like with Wick, you'll want to have control of the vision console, and place your cams in gaps of vision. Keep an eye out for isolated players that you can get the jump on, but don't put yourself in position to get third party. Combat pings don't ping on the map, but hunts do. Careful about giving away your position for a small bit of mastery. The same goes for when you're behind too. When it comes time to pick a safe zone, know that all safe zones aren't weighted equally. Take a safe zone like Chapel for instance. In this zone, there's one small zone and one much larger zone, meaning one zone is going to force fights a lot quicker than the other. In a zone like this, where both zones are fairly equal distance to the final square, you'll want to choose the zone that your character fights best in. For a zone like Pond, both safe zones are similar, being their respective bridges. However, the larger bridge zone is much closer to the final zone. So if you're one of the stronger players, you'll want to take this zone so that you can hold the path across to the other zone. You've probably heard me talk about many times on this channel about being in an ABC scenario. This is when you're alone in a safe zone and there's other players fighting in the other safe zone. With the new timer changes in Season 9, players can no longer see other players' timers. While this makes timer scamming harder, it doesn't change too much for ABCing. Like always, you'll want to leave your zone when you have a second more timer than the game timer is counting down for that night. This will ensure that you don't time out when safe zones end. It also gives you the best chance at third partying any kills. Because you can't see other players' timers, however, you'll want to keep track of how many kills the opposing safe zone players are picking up. If a player is consistently getting kills, you're probably not going to be able to time them out. When a safe zone expires, you'll probably have a 1v1 for the final square. On the rare chance that it isn't a 1v1, you don't want to be the one to engage onto someone. Try to start a fight from a safe distance. If you have a ton of poke, you can likely poke another player down, and someone else will try and engage first to get the kill. Careful what cooldowns you use. If you blow everything you have trying to start a fight, you open yourself up to get engaged on. If you feel like you might have the least amount of timer, you might have to just send it on to someone. Use these tips and tricks to help you close out games. In the next part, we're going to look at some tips and tricks that can help improve your play that aren't gameplay mechanics. If you're struggling to make it to the late game, click or tap the screen now to check out my complete beginner's guide to Eternal Return playlist and go over one of the earlier parts.